where are the white folks? Because that's what they used to say in Oklahoma. Oh my goodness, where are the black folks? And I felt like I am here with my people, and I had a great amount of pride for what I saw. I saw beautiful, beautiful homes up and down Sycamore, and in the park on the streets of Sycamore, and up on High Street. And I thought, oh my goodness, wow, what a fantastic place to be in. And I so loved it. Many years I did live in Petersburg. I got married and moved away. But I represent the Virginia Education Association and the school employees that work here in Petersburg. And I am very dismayed with the state of Petersburg at this point. I've heard the firefighters, I've seen the police officers, and I know what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We cannot live without first responders. And our first responders need equipment that will help them to do their job. More importantly, I, as a member of the Virginia Education Association and representing school employees, I have to say that when you don't have a good education system, people aren't coming to Petersburg at you. If you don't have teachers, qualified teachers, in your classroom to teach our children to grow up and be responsible adults, to read laws, to understand them, and make wise decisions on whom to vote for, and then challenge those people that they put in office that don't do as they were elected to do, then we have a problem. It is our job as educators and parents and community citizens to be what the African proverb says, the community raises the children. Everybody in the community steps forth and raises the children. And when I look at my school buildings in Petersburg and recognize that many of the people who are in those classes are substitutes because they can't find quality educators to come here, we've got a problem. When you set up and fuss and talk about poor test scores and say, well, we can't put any more money into the school system because the teachers aren't doing their jobs. You walk in those buildings, you see what those teachers have to work with. You see who is actually teaching the class and how many of them are actually substitutes because you have to go to New York, Pennsylvania, and everywhere else to bring someone right here in Virginia when you have colleges and universities who put out good teachers and can do the job. But you can't find them when you, I understand, it may be time, but it needs to be said, and I have to say it. You have to put your money where it's going to be effective. You have to put it with your police department, who's going to protect us, the fire people and first responders, and you've got to put it in education. Because no company, no person is going to come here with someone who has a poor education system, because that's the very first thing they look at. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, my name is Ralph Westbay. I live at 8425 Kinley Drive in Clinton, Virginia. I am the past Assistant Superintendent for Finance for Petersburg School, 17 years here in the city. And I've recently retired, and I've just been following what's going on just out of interest. I still come in, I have lots of friends, former students who live here. And so I was listening to all this, and unfortunately, I've spent the better part of probably 160 hours reviewing all your documents and financial papers over the last 2 months. I sent you information, and one of the things, a couple things, and one thing I was struck by was the gentleman that came over here and said, you don't come up without, if you have some criticism to make a recommendation. And so I've got a recommendation to make, and you know, the response of this, the outpouring here tonight is unbelievable, and it's just not surprising by any means, of course, but and it's tremendous to see that everybody, the amount of passion there is for this. But it's unbelievable how far off the rails this thing has gone, and over the last 5 years, I looked at 2 5-year periods. The previous city manager retired in June of 2011. The new administration took over in July of 2011. So in FY 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, that 5-year period, in the 5-year period preceding that, from 07 to 11, of the 3 funds, the general fund, the mass transit fund, and the golf fund, in sum, balanced. They were effectively break even in operations for that 5-year period. The general fund accrued a $6 million surplus in that period, which helped offset the deficits that occurred in the mass transit and the golf fund. The golf purchase was done because it was a blight on the city. It was an opportunity to try and help improve economic development. And somebody cited that there's 17,000 people that visit the golf course now annually. That's a lot of economic booms to the businesses in this city. For those, and I know for one, I come down here and play golf with former students of mine. We blow $50 at a restaurant when we finish. So, you know, times 17,000, that's a whole lot of money. That's hundreds of thousands. But be that as it may, that operation needs to stand on its own, and mass transit was offered because it's a city of poverty, and many of the people don't have the private ability with private transportation, so mass transit was a means to give people an opportunity to go to either get an education somewhere or to take them to a job. And so the intent was that the general fund would help snuff up the surplus over time to help offset and help fund the mass transit operation. A big improvement for life in the city. And so now we're looking at reduction. And so let me finish my last. The 5-year period then running from FY12 to 16 has seen an amass of close to $28 million in deficit. So the difference here, and yes, the mass transit and the golf operation started back under the previous administration in 08 and 09, but they were operated in total on a break-even level. So the difference here is that the budgets of the last 5 years have not been managed well. They've been mismanaged to the tune of $28 million in deficit, or just the general fund alone, $21 million. And if you look at $18 million over say 20,000 adult residents of the city, that's $900 for every man and woman in the city in debt. So now you're faced with having to make some very unpleasant decisions to balance this budget. But the problem is, and is it true that you're saying that you're saving $800,000 a month right now with current efficiencies that have been accrued on the payroll? Is that true? And if it is, that's $9.6 million a year. Well, you're looking at recommendations here of $3.8 million in additional revenues and $8.8 million in cuts. Well, you don't need to make cuts if you're already saving $9 million a year. Although the problem is, you're not saving $9 million a year in payroll. Your entire payroll for the general fund, including benefits, is $30 million. So if you're saving $9 million, that's 10%. That's 1/3 of it. You're not saving 33% of your payroll, and so there's revenues that have been misaligned. But the document you mentioned earlier,
sir,
which is what?
please wrap up your comment.
Okay. I'll wrap up here very shortly. So, as Mr. Morris cited a little bit ago, the revenues for the past 6 years have been very constant. And I was surprised to see that even last year, in FY16, your revenues were consistent, even in the general property taxes and other taxes. In FY15, they were $32 million. In FY16, they were the same. You didn't lose revenue in real property taxes. The same thing with other taxes. All the other taxes combined, $12 million. You collected the same amount in 16. Whether or not you made budget is another issue. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the question is, how much revenue did you actually receive, and then did you live within that revenue in terms of your expenditures? And the reality is you spent $81 million last year. You spent altogether, but budget-wise, you missed the revenues. You were short $8 million, and then you overspent the budget by $2 million, which created a $10 million gap. But the problem is, the biggest place where you dropped was $13 million in state revenues. All the other revenues were consistent. So the question is, what happened to state revenues? And you're talking about a few $100,000, but it's a much bigger issue than that. So the question is, if we can tighten up and get the fiscal management under control, is there an opportunity to collect a substantially increased amount of state revenue, which is going to eliminate the need to do all these other things that you're looking at potentially. So that brings me to my recommendation, and that is, I'm not hearing confidence in terms of the kind of responses of somebody and does this external group. We haven't seen it, but what I would have done is hold public meetings, involve the citizens, involve employees out of each department, put them on a committee to review and look at the facts. What were the revenues in each line item, and what do you expect them to be in the coming year? Right now you're saying $61 million is your target, I believe. It's not really clear. Are you saying that the target for the general fund next year is $61 million? And if that's true, you're already looking at this past year, you had $67 million with a misstep. And so the chances of getting even more revenue for this next year is probably greater. So my recommendation is, I would put this on hold for a couple of weeks, examine this so that you know exactly what's in every single revenue line item, unless you are saying you already know that for a fact. I would bring back your previous city manager and finance director on an interim basis only. You need somebody who has expertise that understands the nuances of this, and I would place Ms. Belton back as director of mass transit where she came from, and have her come up with a plan that's going to help balance that mass transit operation. That is how I would attack this problem for the next few weeks, before you make final decisions on everything that must be made, and then at least have an opportunity to explain each of those items and put it up on the website for everybody to look at so everyone understands the entire picture before decisions are made.
My name is John Hennessy. I live at 516 Oak Hill Road in a house that you value at $135,000. I've looked around me and I can't see it. In fact, there's 2 houses for sale on my street, bigger houses, better houses. One is right now going on purchase at $81,000. The other one is down to $72,500. In other words, you are already taxing the living dickens out of me for my house. And you want to pick $1 out of my pocket for trash. You want to raise my personal property taxes. You want to bleed me dry. Now, all of you can say it was the past administration, but it's not. When you took that position, you took that chair, you should have gotten a budget, you should have had an accountant come in and tell you that there was a hole. But you just sat there and took it. I don't know whether you were naive enough to believe the past people. Oh, everything's fine, it's cool. If you were, I hate to say it, but you were really dumb. Thank you.
Hi. Again, my name is Arthur Capuano. I was raised to be a scientist by a scientist. And I look at numbers, I look at facts, I look at information, and I take it dry. I don't care who it is, what the past was, I look at just the information. And I look at a town here that has financial problems, that needs to bring in more business, more money, more people, more enthusiasm, more of all the good things. And I see 10%, 20% taxes being increased on the people. I see the town being driven down further to where if you can get another company, any major business to come into this town, they're going to look at the bottom line and go, wait, it costs too much money to do business there. So what you all will decide to do is, well, we'll give them a break on taxes, we'll give them a break on this, we'll do this, we'll give them all these freebies that should be going to all these people, and we'll get the company in here, and they get a great deal, and we just get another company barely making business in a town that's going under. Because that's where we're going, it's down. There's no place up. I look at what's happening here. It's only a matter of time till you come with another 10%, and another 10%, then you cut these things, you cut those things, and Petersburg ends up as less and less and less. I don't hear any conversation of more, new, different, outside the box thinking. I don't see people doing fundraisers of any kind. Anything that will bring money into the town. All I see them is strangling the few people that are still here more. And all you're going to do is harm us. And we're already the ones harmed. And if we had all these wonderful kinds of money, then you could double all your taxes and we wouldn't care. But you can't do that because you would just drive the country, this whole town under instantly. So how are things going to change going into the future? What's going to be done new going into the future? And how are all these percentages that you're adding to raise more money eventually going to come down in the future so that we don't pay the highest property tax? We don't pay the top, this tax and that tax, and tell people, don't buy your cigarettes in Petersburg, get them before you go to Petersburg. If you're going to eat, don't eat in Petersburg, eat before you get to Petersburg, or eat after you leave. People aren't stupid. People aren't all hand-to-mouth with no choices. The intelligent people have choices. So why don't we run a town for intelligent people and raise everybody up to intelligent thinking and say, this is who we want to be. We're not going to settle for less, settle for nothing. That we want more, just like the rest of the world wants more. And there's always a path between here and more. But you got to look for it, and you got to do things to get to it. I don't see any of that conversation here. I see things being isolated down to small conversations about small things, and all our attention goes to this one little thing, but 99.9% of everything else is out of whack. So we'll take another little tenth of a percent of something, and we'll worry about that for a little while. And we get all the talk, but we've never even gotten to 1% of the conversation yet. And that is tomorrow. What'll be different? Where will the new money come in from? Instead of reshuffling the money we already have, where's the new money going to come from that makes us bigger and better? And a gentleman just spoke about the value of his house.
Sir,
you look at it as
your
twice.
time is up.
Okay.
Wrap it up, please.
You look at his house as twice what it's supposed to be worth. Well, what if it was actually worth twice what you say it's worth? That can be done. It's been done all over the country. But a town has to have something to sell. And Petersburg's had a lot to sell between history and everything else. You're just not putting it out there properly. And you're not helping the people with doing it. I mean, act like a community.
All right, members of the council, are there any questions with respect to personal property tax? Councilman Hill.
I'd like to ask you, I consider manager for clarification on the financial statement you just heard from the gentleman. Do you have any enlightenment on that?
Yes. Prior to FY 2012, financial management or the management of the financial system created interfund loans for mass transit and the golf course. Annually, the mass transit lost $2 million annually, and the capper did not show this loss as it showed as an interfund loan. When the financial advisors began to look at financing of projects, CIP projects, and other things that would be done during the 2012 through 2016 time period, that's when they discovered this amount had been denoted as an interfund loan, which would inevitably really be debt that the city was not showing. Some of the issues that we have with the revenues that are shown as coming in and as part of the discovery is the fact that loan proceeds have been used in our revenue numbers. So when we go get a loan anytime during the year, it is denoted as revenue, and that's what we have seen in the past to base budgeting numbers on. Well, loan proceeds cannot be included in your operating revenues numbers. So once we begin to pull out CIP numbers, capital projects, other restricted funds that do not belong as denoted as revenue, we noticed that the general fund had to come down from the 80 million to 60 60 million because the revenues were not generated. Again, for many years, the deficit was covered by a number of financial different management tactics. And once you peel away all of those one-time revenues and other things that did not exist, we have this 12 million structural imbalance that now we have to cut in order to even maintain the service levels that we have proposed. So some of the reasons that there were a reduction in the state revenues is based on the creation of special funds. $6 million that are state funds, VDOT funds, pulled out from the general fund and are now in a special fund. You had all of the loans that come into the library, into the police and the fire department, pulled from the general fund revenues and placed into the special fund. So when you have those items pulled out, when you look at your revenues, you see a reduction because those have now been placed for special fund. So the special fund is a set of programs that have designated funds for special uses. So again, for the police, a special fund would be asset forfeiture, meaning that monies that are collected would be placed in this line item, and it has to be asset forfeiture eligible items. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office has funds in the special fund. So the special funds are set aside, and it's denoted in the budget because these funds are specifically for the programs. The library has special funds. In the special fund, you could have grants from the Counter Foundation that have to be specifically set aside for the library. So again, when those things came out of the general fund, you do see a reduction, as well as the non-use of loan proceeds in our revenues. And again, the interfund loans that were previously used are some of the reasons that the information is incorrect.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the statement, Ms. Belton. Numbers, I'd still like to get some clarification on that actual revenue history. I did send that to you and the attorney this morning, so we'll work on that. But I want to reference Ms. Hairston's letter again. She did make some recommendations as far as personal property tax. In 2014, she states supplemental billings for prorated taxes were generated and mailed out to the taxpayer to be paid within 60 days. I recommend we revisit that procedure, which would generate more of a steady cash flow in between the twice-a-year due dates. Although the amount of taxes collected each 60 days is not significantly large, it would be consistent. So that's our issue, is cash flow. For business, it needs to be cash flow. Now, she also recommended that we consider reducing the personal property tax relief amount. Now, in 2015, it was reduced from 65 to 53%. But she doesn't recommend doing that reduction plus an increase to the 490. So my question would be, if the council votes to do the 490, when would that take effect?
Based on the book not being published, which would be published in February, it would take effect October 1, with the impact being on the first set of bills that would come out with the existing process of February.
So October 1 implementation date, February 2017. Mayor, member of council, it seems like we have some time that we have another meeting in September. I'd be willing to support Ms. Belton working with Ms. Hairston and table this item so that we can get the proper information. That would also help with the cash flows. Again, it's about revenue and cash flows. So I'd be willing to do that. Can a put a motion on. Do you have more questions, Mr. Mayor?
Any other questions from members of council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, member of council, I'd like to make a recommendation that in reference to the recommendation 4, personal property tax, that it be tabled at this point, that a review would be done of the supplemental billing periods and the personal property tax relief amount to come back to council at our next September meeting.
Council Coleman?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Coleman. Councilmember Hart. Councilmember Hill. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Wilson Smith. Vice Mayor Pern.
No.
Mayor Myers.
No.
Motion's passed. The next item, a public hearing on proposed ordinance amending section 94-56 of the Code of the City of Petersburg for solid waste fees. Ms. Belton.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like a 3-minute recess, please.
Councilman Hart?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Coleman.